£600 billion is a fucking lot of money, right? That's £12,000 per adult in the entire country. So if you don't have £12,000 more cash now than you had 3 years ago, someone's got your £12,000. That's a lot of fucking money. And if we assume that all went to top 10%, right, which I think is a good sort of first order approximation, that means every single adult in the top 10% richest people in the country getting 120 grand cash. That fucking happened. And
where did that cash go?
Well, they're gonna. The interesting thing is, you can't get rid of it once it's out there, right? It only circulates, right? So first thing they do is they try and buy assets, because that's what rich people do. So that's why we saw this massive boom in the stock market, and that's why we saw this massive boom in house prices. But the thing about that is, that doesn't get rid of the money, right? I try and buy your house, you try and buy my house, we're just swapping the money between us. So the prices go up. What you will see is some richer people buying the houses of poorer people, and that will often happen generationally. So for example, a lot of my friends from poorer backgrounds who've been like saving up really hard 70, 80 grand deposits. Now, nowadays, you can't buy a house with 70, 80 grand deposit in London. Suddenly, they're competing with the kids of richer families, their parents giving them the 300 grand, and then, so they don't get the house. So what you see is, generationally, houses that would have been bought by kids from poorer families are now being bought by kids from richer families. So you do see a loss of asset ownership in the poor. But essentially, the money doesn't disappear, it just circulates. If the government gives money out, until the government taxes it back, people will have more money. And the big question is, who will have more money? And that is the question that nobody was asking during COVID.
Do you think quantitative easing was a mistake then? Because obviously that creation of more money isn't just a response to COVID. That's been the default alongside low interest rates since 2008.
That's a really good question. And my answer is actually no. And I think that might surprise some people. And when I say what I've said, that inflation was caused by the government giving money out and by the low interest rates, you might think that I'm opposed to the government giving money out and low interest rates. I'm not. The government had to do that. I'm not opposed to furlough at all. I'm not opposed to the massive deficits the government ran during COVID at all. Those had to be done. Otherwise, people would have literally died, right? People would have not paid the rent. People would have become homeless. People would have not been able to eat. Had to be done. But at the same time, if you're giving out £600 billion, you have to do an analysis of who's going to end up with this money. And if that analysis had been done, then we would have seen, well, we're injecting a fucking massive amount of money to the rich here. A massive amount. And then, we had the period of lockdown when that money wasn't damaging because the rich couldn't really spend it because they're locked at home, right? We could have used that 1.5 years, 2 years to say, okay, we have to do this thing which is going to make the rich fucking rich. So we use the time we have to work out a way to tax them effectively to take that money back. If you give £600 billion to the rich and you don't want to see effects, you have to find ways to take that money back. And we had a year and a half where we could have had a sensible conversation about, okay, look, COVID's shit. We had to do this thing and it's going to massively increase inequality. We need to figure out how to stop that from happening.